How does Scott Barrett like to build his dynasty teams? We're talking about all that and more on today's episode of Locked On Dynasty.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Matt Williamson and Ryan McDowell.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Dynasty your first listen every day. I'm your host, Ryan McDowell. You can follow me on Twitter at RyanMC23. Joining me, as always, is former NFL scout Matt Williamson. Find Matt on Twitter at WilliamsonNFL. And Matt, today's a good day. As you might have guessed from our intro, we've got another guest. And it is our buddy Scott Barrett from Fantasy Points. Find Scott on Twitter at Scott Barrett DFB. Dude, fantasy bro, we're glad to have you back, Scott. What's up, man?
Yeah, happy to be on. Thanks for having me, guys. Like I said before the show started, I could talk Dynasty with you all day. And I often do in DMs asking your thoughts on trades.
I miss the DFB days. You were a little wilder. You've grown up. You've matured. You're a businessman now, and I mean, speaking of, you guys have a big week going on over at Fantasy Points. I think we're going to talk about it a little bit as we get into the show here, but give our listeners kind of a heads up of what you guys have going on, because I really do think it's very impactful for fantasy players, for dynasty players, really for the entire industry.
Yeah, so July 17th, we officially launched Fantasy Points data. We really think this tool is comparable only to tools that like other fantasy sites are paying $15,000, $20,000 a year or more for. And we just put it out to the consumer for just $50 this year. Really think it's an incredible product where it caters to both like the average fantasy fan, but then also professional bettors and analysts such as ourselves who can really get deep into the weeds. It's customizable in a way that no other site is. If you wanted to know which quarterback led the league in fourth quarter, fourth down passes under pressure with 15 plus mile per hour winds against cover two on the road as an underdog, we have that.
So I have to say this because I'm blown away by it, because I have not been on social media. I've been a Fantasy Point subscriber since inception. Of course, it's a phenomenal site. And I just happened to ask these two gentlemen before we hit record, do you have any clue where I can find negative runs by team? And I'm assuming they'd be like, nah, I haven't seen it, because I've been looking for like an hour like an idiot. And Scott's like, it just so happens. Boom. I'm like a pig and poop right now. Happy as could be. The luck is unbelievable. And thank you so much. Everyone should check it out. And Scott, you mentioned this to start the show. How awesome is it just to pick up your phone, text Ryan and be like, this fantasy trade, should I make it or not? This dynasty trade. I bug him all the time.
I do it maybe a little too much. I hope I don't annoy you, Ryan. But yeah, you've been a big help to me, especially in terms of gauging market value. I think you were crucial in one trade last year where I was like, really early in the season, I'm like, yeah, they're offering me DeAndre Swift plus a round 3 for Chris Olave. And you're like, do not trade Chris Olave. Do not do that. And then lo and behold, DeAndre Swift, I think, saw his price drop like 8 rounds.
Yeah, that was, you don't win them all for sure, but I've had a good feeling about Olave, and that's looking good so far. Well, we are going to talk some dynasty today. We're continuing our dynasty team building series, and I gave Scott the chance to discuss this new tool, this new offering that they have over at Fantasy Points for the entire show, and he was like, no, we got to talk some dynasty. I want to talk about team building strategy and startup strategy. So that's what we're going to do. And Scott, you and I have been in a couple of dynasty startups over the past few years, and I will say you've got your specific strategy, and I've noticed that you go to the extreme with it. You go all out with this strategy. So tell us a little bit about just what your plan is when you join a dynasty startup. Of course, we're going to assume it's super flex, it's tight end premium. What's your plan when you're going into that new league?
Well, that's where all the value is, in my opinion, at the extremes. Like you hear Warren Buffett talk about investing where he's like, yeah, my time horizon is indefinitely. I want to buy a stock and hold it for forever. At the very least, I'm looking at what it's going to be doing in 10 years, where everyone else is sort of looking at what's going to happen in the next quarter. And so with that longer time preference, there's an exploitable edge. And I feel like the same thing is true in dynasty leagues. The one concern with my strategy is like the league folding. All of my leagues, Ryan, I collect buy-ins for 5 years. So there's very little risk of the league folding. And so in a league like that, I'm typically trying to, I call it the tank then bank, which by the way, may or may not be exactly the same as productive struggle. If I ripped you off, I apologize, but
we're all friends here. Yeah.
But I am intentionally punting year one, intentionally punting year two, more or less. I want to finish dead last because guess what? You get rewarded for that in dynasty leagues. You get the 101. And so with running backs in particular, you have to navigate free agency. You have to navigate the draft. They could always bring in competition and hurt that running back, or the injury risk is so high. Like Breece, we haven't seen it with his ADP, but in my mind, Breece Hall like dropped a bunch of spots in my rankings because of that ACL. And they're just like such a fragile asset. So I full fade running backs. I want literally zero. So I'm taking zeros and I'm finishing dead last. And then I'll get, like this year, Bijan Robinson on a bunch of my teams that drafted the year before. I'm paying up for quarterbacks in a super flex league because that's the scarcest and most valuable position in that format. After that, just loading up on wide receivers, maybe some upside tight ends and tight end premium, non-tight end premium. I don't know why you'd never play that, but I would just full fade. More or less tight ends is just not that valuable.
Wow.
Yeah. A couple interesting things that you said that I just want to highlight there. That really is the big advantage. And maybe it's obvious, but the big advantage of tanking year one, whether you call it tank, then bank, productive struggle, we do have a similar goal of those two strategies is we want to be last. We want to get that 101. Because not only are you getting to control the draft from the top, but that player that you're getting, of course, this year it's Bijan Robinson, Breece Hall, or one of the quarterbacks, whoever it might be in past years, that player is almost always a top 20, top 24 asset at worst as they enter the league. And of course, we know, we're really seeing that to the extreme this year that Bijan Robinson has a top 3 ADP in single quarterback leagues. He has a first round ADP in super flex leagues. So if you tried this strategy last year, and I know Scott certainly did, it's really paying off in getting that valuable asset added to the players that you did have from the previous year. I do want to, this one's a little more specific, Scott, but I think a lot of people are dealing with it. And it sounds like maybe you have as well. So you've got this bad team, intentionally bad, hopefully, that you earned the 101 with. Are you taking Bijan on those teams, even though even though you might not be ready to win or to compete in year two, knowing what we know about running backs? What's kind of the way you're attacking that this season?
Or are you trying to flip them into an Olave or something like that?
No. Yeah. So here's the distinction. Okay. I'm not drafting bad teams. I'm drafting really good teams that are just extremely weak at one position intentionally. The running back position, I have teams right now where the only running backs on my roster are Boston Scott and then some guy who's the RB6 on, the Jaguars, whatever. And that's intentional. And then I get Bijan next year and I could, trade, I can get James Conner for a 3rd round pick or something obscene. And then I feel good about my team because I should be stacked everywhere else. But if I'm not, then we could talk about, trading back Bijan, kicking the can down the road another year and bolstering the team somewhere else.
So therefore, after the Bijan pick, after the Conner trade, which you could do easily, All of a sudden you check the boxes to put your starting lineup in on Sunday morning, and it's quite strong.
Absolutely. So you tank year one, maybe year two, and then you bank. You take it to the bank, and then you build a juggernaut where you're dominating the league for, I don't know, 4 years in a row, 5 years, potentially, like until the other owners get sick of you and drop out of the league. But yeah, you absolutely want to get your running backs in rookie drafts. That's when they're at their cheapest. Okay. That's when they're at their most potent, because running backs are immediately hyper productive. That's like their peak years are year 1, year 2, year 3, and then they start to decline. Injuries start to pile up. So I just really think that this is the optimal strategy on multiple levels.
But then you're shopping Bijan after year 2 or whatever, when he's still
maybe year 4, year 5, and then trying to pick up a new rookie running back. I know Sean Siegel kind of goes that route where he's like perpetually trading guys right at their peak.
So yeah, hearing that, Scott, just a few of the details. Yeah, I think you did rip me off in that strategy, but that's okay, because I stole the term productive struggle from the education world, as I've talked about so many times. So that's okay. This is the way fantasy football works. We hear ideas that we like, we take pieces of them, and we use all that to help us build better and better.
Well, from that, you have my word. From now on, every time I reference it, I will do tank then bank. What's this called?
It's slash
productive struggle. I did just want to mention one more important, crucial piece to this, is that in startup drafts, I'm trying to trade down as much as possible. The only time I'll ever trade up is for a Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen, just because quarterbacks in Superflex are so valuable, so dominant. You know, they could play till they're in their 40s. Very little risk, I think. But outside of just those like 2 players, I am always trying to trade down, amass capital, and win those trades, which you'll see in startups, especially industry leagues. You're often winning those trades, and then you amass rookie picks. And by the way, as an aside, I feel like everyone should have their rookie drafts before the NFL draft. It's more fun. I also think there's more of an edge there. And then if you're in a best ball dynasty league, like your number one goal is just trade down and acquire capital as much as possible, because in that format, depth is so important. So you could trade down from, 103 to the 105, pick up a round 1 pick, trade that down to the 201, pick up a round 1 pick, trade that down to the 307, pick up a round 1 pick. So you basically just traded, I don't know, Jamar Chase or whatever, and for Christian Watson, plus like next year's Christian Watson and the year after that's Christian Watson. So it's just like such a potent advantage in general, but especially in best ball.
Yeah, good stuff. I definitely have some more I want to ask you about the tank then bank strategy. We're going to do that next.
Folks, take your first swing at betting Major League Baseball on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. That's right. Bet $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 you can spend betting everything from the money line to over-under to who you think's going to hit the first home run. It's all on an app that's safe, secure, super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you can get paid instantly. There's no better place to bet on MLB than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon, all one word, to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, the official partner of Major League Baseball.
So, Scott, you mentioned a couple of pieces of that dynasty startup strategy. You're avoiding running backs. You are trying to trade down. And, when I was implementing the productive struggle strategy and really starting that, almost 10 years ago now, that was fairly easy to do. Right.
Oh, man, I thought I invented the wheel 3 years ago. My bad, Ryan.
Yeah, I'm rubbing that in a little bit. But no, the point is that was easy to do. It was somewhat of a rarity to ignore the running back position, to try to trade down, even to acquire future first round picks was not something that necessarily everybody was looking to do. But those pieces that go into productive struggle, that go into tank, then bank, it feels like almost everybody in a dynasty startup wants to do that same thing now. They want young wide receivers. They want to focus on quarterbacks in super flex leagues. Obviously, the running back position has been devalued in dynasty leagues and even in the NFL, obviously. And acquiring future first, trading down for those future picks has become kind of the norm. So have you seen that strategy has been more difficult to pull off in typical leagues? Are you getting less in those trade downs? Like, how are you adjusting that way?
Yeah. So I have seen that in some leagues. You could really, the first thing I'll do is like, I'll just talk to all the owners in the league. Like, hey, what's your strategy going to be? Are you playing it by year? Do you kind of know what you want to do? Try and get a vibe that way. And then as the draft starts to play out, you can kind of see where you're making offers and like no one's trying to move up or everyone's trying to trade for a rookie round 1 pick. And like I said at the top, it's like the value's at the extremes. And there's instances where it's the other extreme you should be targeting. You should go win now, especially if, it's not a league that collects buy-ins for 5 years. It has the potential to fold. And so you go win now. And if that's where the value is, that's where you should be. I love the productive struggle strategy, but like in your Twitter best ball league, which I won last year, that was a super win now team. Black Crown, Curtis's league, I've been second place, I think all 3 years. And that was a super win now team. It's less fun and it's less sexy and less exciting to have, a bunch of players who are just like slowly losing value. But I mean, Jacob Rick Rhodes made a ton of money over the years employing that strategy in high stakes leagues. And you'll be surprised. You can like keep kicking that can down the road, like Matthew Berry's doing in the DFB league, where, he'll just trade his first round pick every single year. And like, he'll get a decent productive player to fill a hole in his roster. And he's finished, I think he's led in points scored like every single season we've done it, which has been like a 4-year league.
So Matthew's been taking like the Rams approach, if I follow correctly.
That's exactly right.
I guess you get one Super Bowl out of it. I mean, eventually you got to pay the credit cards off.
I mean, you get 12x your buy-in, you win the league if it's like a super top heavy league, and then you could suck for 11 years and break even.
Yeah, okay, I hear you.
So Scott, let's go back to pre-draft. In kind of a normal year, you're ready to do that startup draft. It's super flex, it's tight end premium. What are you doing before the draft to prepare?
Number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 is going to dynastyleaguefootball.com, looking at the ADP,
good answer.
familiarizing myself with that. Like, you have to know the market. You have to know the market. And then from there, I'm really circling names for like targets I want. Also, once I'm done circling my, 10 must draft guys, there might be like empty space of like 24 picks. And it's like, well, that would be a great spot to trade out of. And here there's like 5 names in a row. That'd be a great spot to try and move into. So looking at that, and then like must draft targets, like players I really don't want to miss out on, top values. That's definitely the most important thing for sure.
Yeah, Matt, I don't know if you're sensing a theme here, but we had Clay from Dynasty Trades in 5 on last week, and it came up how important tiers are, whether you're trading, whether you're drafting, knowing which players are in that tier and trying to stay within that tier, or maybe even tier up, specifically in a startup draft, as you said, Scott, finding those dead spots. I want to move either up or down, but I want to get out of this spot because I don't really want any of these guys. So doing that pre-draft rather than you're on the clock and everybody feels like a reach is so vital there.
I think dead spots in general, even in redraft with your buddy kind of leagues, is crucial to know in a draft. And really, you just don't get that any other way than doing quite a few drafts or really studying it,
Really good stuff on startup draft strategy. I've got one more thing I want to talk with Scott about. We're going to do that right after this. Thanks for making Locked On Dynasty your first listen every day. Everydayers, come back and check out tomorrow's show. We are going to have Heath Cummings from CBS. We'll be talking about how he likes to build his dynasty teams. So listen in for that tomorrow. All right, Scott, we are back, and listeners, we are talking to Scott Barrett from Fantasy Points. Find him on Twitter at Scott Barrett DFB. And Scott, on Twitter, you are one of the few people that I have, I don't know, what are they, alerts set up for. So every time you tweet, I'm getting an alert on my phone. Most of those I ignore, but in the off season, I pay close attention because I love these deep dives you do, these player threads you do. And it's really obvious that you are, you're in the weeds, you're in the workshop here, digging into what we can expect for specific players in the upcoming season. And, from a dynasty standpoint, for seasons to come. I'm guessing the new Fantasy Points data suite that we talked about earlier is only going to make your job and all of our jobs easier from that standpoint. So I just wanted you to talk a little bit about that as far as what that process is like for you in the off season, really digging deep into players and ultimately coming to a decision about how you're going to value that player.
Yeah, it definitely makes things really easy on me. I was talking to Derek Brown over at Fantasy Pros about Rashid Shaheed. And I think I'm in a best ball draft and I just took Rashid Shaheed in like the 15th round. And I'm like, he might be the best value in all of dynasty leagues. I never thought I would say that about UDFA Rashid Shaheed, but he had a generationally good yards per route run for a rookie. He had 90 more yards than Chris Olave over the last 8 weeks of the season, despite running only 11 more routes. And this was a best ball league, and he's like perfectly suited for best ball as a deep threat, a high level playmaker, really fast. He led the league in percentage of catches, gaining 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50 plus yards. And so he just seemed like an awesome pick. And like at round 15, there's no downside. And even if there was, like, the upside argument is out of control and like no one is making it.
And just wait till Michael Thomas gets hurt. That's bound to happen any minute now too. I mean, buy him now while you still can, I guess is my point. So real quick, I'm enamored with this product you guys are putting out, and I'm sure you had much to do with it, and it's been eating up 20 of your 24 hours a day. But as Ryan mentioned, have you got a chance yet to really study the numbers and find out all sorts of things, or have you just been too busy building it?
No, definitely digging into the numbers, trying to come up with cool stats. We've had access to this data for well over a year. It just took our developers a lot of time to get it as perfect as we wanted to be able to sell it. So just everything you've seen from me, my tweets, my article content. I've been using this for quite some time now.
Okay.
Here's my Rashid Shaheed stat. All right.
Oh, I want to hear it. Yeah.
Top rookie wide receiver seasons by yards per route run since 2007. 1, Martavis Bryant. 2, Odell Beckham Jr. 3, AJ Brown. 4, Justin Jefferson. 5, Rashid Shaheed. 6, Jamar Chase. 7, Chris Olave. 8, Percy Harvin. 9, Hakeem Nicks. 10, Tyreek Hill. 11, Christian Watson. 12, Doug Baldwin. So like, to me, that seems like a super predictive stat, like just puts him in elite company. And this is also something I'm seeing, like, this might be a generationally good sophomore class because Shaheed was awesome. Olave was awesome. Christian Watson was awesome. Drake London was awesome.
Wilson.
More than that as well. And it's
sure, yeah.
Give me as many sophomore wide receivers as possible.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a pretty good list.
Yeah, very good list. I'm gonna have to go buy Rashid Shaheed before we make this episode.
Don't send this out yet. Yeah, don't publish this yet.
Absolutely.
Get some offers out there.
Really, really good stuff today, Scott, on startup draft strategy, on the new Fantasy Points data suite. Definitely encourage everyone to check that out. There really is something there for everybody. If you're a casual fantasy or dynasty player, or if you are as deep into this as we are, it will blow you away, I think. So definitely check that out, and check out all of Scott's work at Fantasy Points and at Scott Barrett DFB on Twitter. That is going to do it for today's show, though. Please make sure you download and subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Remember to follow the show at Locked On Dynasty. Follow Matt at Williamson NFL. And I'm Ryan, MC23. We'll be back next time with more Locked On Dynasty.